Hello everyone and welcome back to episode 9 of what's rapidly becoming a monthly series of this complete course construction. Hopefully you recognise this hole, this drivable par 4, the 8th that I was working on in the previous episode. I've since added the fairway and fleshed it out a bit more, filled in these bunkers on the right hand side that hopefully the intention was to accentuate this sort of diagonal drawing off the hill in the distance. I'm not sure how much that's going to be visible when everything's planted up and all that, but I'm pretty happy with how it's looking at the moment, so I'm going to try and preserve as much of that as possible. These bunkers also do some pretty heavy lifting when we turn around and play down the 12th, coming back the other way, which hopefully we'll get to in the future. But you saw me play this hole enough in the previous episode, I don't really need to go over it too much more. Just decided against adding anything in the middle of the fairway to split up the layup. I don't think people are encouraged enough to go for it, as it is short par 4 in the game. It's pretty automatic that we're almost certainly going to pull driver and try and whack it at the green. So just really wanted to accentuate and encourage as many shots to whatever part of this fairway you want. Hopefully leave yourself a full wedge in, especially depending on if the pin's different section, maybe you prefer slightly different, slightly better angle from one side or the other. But yeah, fairly happy with where that's at. So I'm going to move on and crack on with the 9th, which will be the first par 3 that I've worked on in this plot. And it's going to be important to consider them as a set, particularly the 9th and the 11th hole, which are both kind of similar-ish length. 9's a little bit shorter. Par 3's hitting in the same direction, so we're going to have the same wind. And they both got a little bit of water involved. So I kind of need to treat them as a pair to make sure that I'm not pulling the same trick twice. Make sure that they play different, they look different, and they feel interesting, they feel exciting and fresh and new. I'm fairly comfortable that 4 is going to be its own thing, sitting on this ridge line. It's a long, level hole. Greens are pretty much the same height as the tee, so it might end up being slightly downhill, but that's long enough, hasn't got water involved. Hopefully one of the defences is going to kind of be the contouring of the green. And 17 is just going to be a almost stereotypical postcard picture, sort of picturesque little textbook short hole that is hopefully more or less going to design itself. So the things to consider, on 11 we've got obviously the water running around the front and the right of the green, so that probably means I don't really want to get anything kind of involved hazarding in there. Definitely not really a bunker, even though I think that would look quite nice. So I'm going to have to get a little bit more creative in how I protect this. I have shifted the green over from the original routing, just got it a little bit closer to the water, so I think it's kind of going to sit fairly comfortably, sort of that wide. It's banked right to left as it is, so the theory is going to be that if we want to leave ourselves an uphill putt, we've kind of got to challenge the water, get as close to it as we can. If we're playing a little bit safer, we're maybe going to be faced with a tricky, speedy downhill putt that might get away from us a little bit. I also think that there's plenty of room to get a really long green involved here, kind of somewhere up to about here. That's going to be far enough out of the way of 7. You can even stick a tree or two in there as well to kind of protect it a little bit if I need to. And there's a pretty natural tee box that's kind of going to sit there. I can really exaggerate how different the hole's going to play to, like, if there's a pin right at the front and a tee right at the front, we're looking at 140 yards. To a pin right at the back and a tee right at the back, we're looking over 200 yards. So that could be an exciting way to keep this hole fresh. That it's going to play pretty different every time depending on the tee and pin combination. So with that in mind, I'm going to have a little look, sketch out some ideas, and come back and see what I've got in a minute. So I've done a little bit of sketching and done a small amount of sculpting just to try and get something going. I've realised that I'm going to have to sort of manufacture something on this green side to make a fun target area. But the first idea that I tried was kind of the idea of a beer. It's like a really long green with this big swale running through the middle. But to be honest, it's kind of my least favourite template hole as is. And also I don't think the hole was really long enough to kind of justify that. The idea being that traditionally you're meant to kind of run your shot up through the swale up onto the back tier. But you could kind of just fly it over it with kind of a 6-iron or whatever. So I tweaked it a little bit, left a high plateau in at the back, and decided to kind of play on a bit of a maiden, particularly the sixth hole at Royal St George's, which has these two, or has an upper tier at the back, and kind of split it in half with a small ridge, which definitely needs some work, because as it currently stands, I think this ridge being 9 yards wide, 190 yards out is too difficult, is too tight a target. So I'll definitely have to do something there. But the bunker placement is not far off what you'd see at 6 at Royal St George's. Although there we're surrounded by dunes on all sides, which can make recovery shots a bit more dicey. But I've kind of replicated that feeling a little bit with the water, with the bunkers. So it's time to crack on and sort of sculpt out these bunkers a little bit and see what how the whole kind of comes together. So my low point that I'm working from is going to be at this back edge of the bunker here. So as long as I am kind of lower than that, we can be pretty happy with what we've got. So I've realised as well in this series that maybe I'm skipping over a little bit too much of some of the work that I'm doing, and just kind of cutting to a completed hull, or not necessarily a completed hull, but a hull that's been worked on a bit, that maybe isn't quite as interesting as it would be to see the process. I guess that's what some people are after. So I'm going to try and show a bit more of how I work through it. That's what I do on my streams, and it's what I'm going to try and do in this series. It's not always going to be thrill a minute, like this sculpting the bunker here, but hopefully I can jazz it up and make it worthwhile, make it fun to watch. Because one thing that was mentioned in one of my streams the other day, Troy Reteach mentioned how he struggles with bunkers, and so we were going through some tips and some ideas of how we can make life a bit easier when it comes to sculpting bunkers in the first place. And one of the key things that can be done is picking a good spot for your bunker first, or sculpting the land around it first, which I've done a little bit here already. You might be able to tell that I've raised up where that back edge is going to be before I sculpt the bunker into it, so that there's going to be that kind of bank for the bunker to sit in. With these flat bottom style bunkers, it can be a bit difficult to get the sand line visible, particularly if you're hitting uphill. Luckily not running into that problem here, but it is still worth being aware of that it might be a bit tricky to be able to see that line of sand, which is something that can really help make the bunkers pop. But even if you can't make the sand line visible, you can definitely do a bit of sculpting to make it obvious that there is a bunker there, or there is a hazard there, and there's something that your golfers want to be avoiding. But I've also been learning that on these flat bottom bunkers, the sort of style I'm going for here, it doesn't actually have to be flat, completely flat. As long as it's level, you can add a bit of a shift to it, a bit of a high side and a low side. So I'm definitely going to bring this front portion of this bunker down a little bit to be able to see more into the bunker. And I'm still sticking with my funky, probably kind of frowned upon water plane technique. That seems to be going all right. It is a bit funky, it's a bit awkward, but it kind of gets the results that I'm after. So let's just sketch these in, and I think I'll flatten the pan properly, sort of off camera, because it's a lot of tedious minor raising and lowering just to get things. That's the wrong spline, isn't it? Let's make it a bunker, and it might actually do what I want it to do. Yeah, so if I'm tinkering around with raising and lowering that pan too much, it will get really repetitive, but that's definitely something I can come back and do off camera. But just enough to kind of get the idea of the hole down, get what I'm looking for, and then probably do a bit more of a look at the green and how I want that to play. Kind of finalise what I've sketched in, or not even finalise, maybe just rough it in a bit more, and get to see what it's looking like off the tee, because at the moment it looks like a large green with a couple of bunkers blocked in it. So I don't want balls running off of the edge here, particularly with this red slope right on the edge of the green. So I'm going to flatten that out just a little bit to try and increase the playing area and the usable area of the green. And mean that if you are kind of just trickling on the edge, you're not going to run off and end up in the water, because that seems overly harsh. I don't mind that I've got a few greens here that are already banked up. That's kind of the style that this course is going to end up being, with sort of pushed up greens. So that kind of similar vibe is not a problem as far as I'm concerned. Because like I say, literally have just pushed up some of these greens, pushed this up a bit, end up pushing up the back half of this quite a lot. This front right side is pushed up quite a lot, and I'm kind of the same here, particularly around the bunkers, but that's kind of more of a bunker style choice. But yes, I'm not unhappy about that. And let's throw down the green. A little bit of almost a false front here, not properly, but definitely enough to kind of repel balls a little bit right from the front edge, just to add a bit of difficulty in approaching those front pins. I know that I can make my courses a lot simpler through the process of playtesting, because I tend to run into minor hiccups, minor headaches, and then I think that's too hard, that needs changing. So my courses do end up being easier than originally intended. So that's something that I'm trying to address, something I'm trying to work on. This isn't quite the same green shape as St George's, but that's all right. It doesn't have to be the same hole, does it? It's just inspired by taking the same sort of approach to golf. But let's get rid of this now and sketch in the fairway. So I had an idea. This front apron was going to be all green when I was looking at making a Biarritz. But I had an idea of maybe just using that as the approach. But I think back from the tee, probably going to rather have something coming around here and kind of front the whole thing. Not sure that it's going to join up with the 10th. Might just be sitting on its own. But I definitely need some. I prefer to have some sort of lap around the green of kind of closely mown area. I don't love the transition from going straight from the rough into the heavy rough. Sorry, straight from the green into the heavy rough. And also it means that balls that are just kind of gently trickling off the edge of the green get caught up right on the edge, and then you're left with potentially putting from just 1 inch off the green. So it's barely a punishment anyway, or maybe quite an easy up and down with a short range chip. So yeah, it's a bit of a combination of factors that mean that I prefer to bring this lap of fairway around the green, trying to maybe move balls slightly further away from the green when they're running off. Partly I just prefer how it looks, so that's what I'm going for. That's my thought process there. But if I throw this down, nice big loop around the front of the green, smooth it out, and then I can jump down and have a look from the tee and see how things are looking. So yeah, hopefully by bringing up that sand, flattening out these bunkers, I'll be able to see right into them and be able to see that sand line. I think, yeah, my worry, like I said, I had to manufacture something here. It is a little bit featureless. Gonna need some fancy planting. I'm not sure how I can really jazz it up and really make it sing. I can raise the tee a little bit and sit it on this bend in the river, and that will also help being able to see into the bunkers. But I think the green is, aside from this ridge running through the back, I think it's all right. I think there's a section at the front, a couple of pins, maybe one in here, just a little bit of mellowing out this slope. Playing into one in here could be interesting. We've maybe got a backstop. We want to be in the right area. Maybe I just add some sort of mound in the front portion to put a premium on accuracy. I can definitely enjoy a pin at the back here, but yeah, maybe this is just a little bit too tight. I'm going to try and hold that back left pin. going to imagine that it's there and see what happens. Not too bad. Has held on to the green. So if the pin was in that area, that would be a pretty good shot. But a very small sample size to only be able to see what happens on one shot and see if it's achievable. But I think it's probably overcooking the difficulty a little bit. But anyway, guys, that's going to be all from me for this episode. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully I can go with this approach a bit more and show off a bit more what I'm working on each time. And if you've got any thoughts, any comments, let me know. Anything you want to see me work on, or any kind of problem areas you'd like to be addressed, and I'll see what I can do. But hopefully you've enjoyed it, and I'll catch up with you in the next one. But until then, that's going to be all from me, guys, so bye for now.